Brian O'Connor got his bag of money from Mississippi State. That's what this was all about. Chris Graham here, Augusta Free Press. I'm feeling like this is probably the last thing we'll report on the Brian O'Connor leaving Virginia for Mississippi State thing. There's really not, after you hear this one, there's not much else we can say. I'll start with earlier in the day on Thursday. I'm recording this on Friday. So Thursday was the day that Mississippi State was going to introduce Brian O'Connor as this new coach, formally introduced, like have an event at the baseball stadium and everything. So early in the day, Jerry Ratcliffe, our colleague, wrote that he had talked with Brian O'Connor. He had known Brian. I mean, Jerry's covered the program closely since Brian got there. I mean, since before Brian got there, but since Brian got there in 2003. And he'd been trying to get Brian to, get back in touch with him since the rumors got out that Brian was perhaps a candidate for the Mississippi State job. Didn't hear from him during that process. Finally heard back from him either Wednesday or Thursday. Jerry didn't say when. And he said he gave Brian the chance to address why he left. So this was, I mean, it wasn't much. I'm sure they had a much longer conversation than this. At least I hope so. But this was the quote. This is exactly what it is, O'Connor said. After 22 years, I needed a change and a new challenge. That's it. Okay, so that's where we get to the bottom of the story. He just needed a change and a challenge. Simple and straightforward, right? Pretty much. I was having a midlife crisis, Jerry, and I saw this shiny maroon sports car on the lot. The sports car, it turns out, had a big bag of loot in the back. The world learned Thursday night that O'Connor, who had signed an extension with UVA just last June, and literally I'm sitting at the College World Series in Omaha, day of UVA's practice, get back up from the field. There's a press release waiting in my inbox and the inbox of all the other UVA beat reporters sitting on both sides of me that talks about O'Connor getting a big raise, $1.4 million a year, and an extension through 2031. So he did that just last June, not even a year ago, because it was June 13th, I think, was the day. It made him the eighth highest paid coach in baseball, by the way, college baseball, by the way. He's now the second highest paid coach. He went from 1.4 million to 2.9 million. Um, and Mississippi State went out of the way to make this public. They didn't make the reporters down there, do a FOIA request like I have to do all the time to get anything out of UV athletics. Um, the former Mississippi Agricultural and Mechanical College wanted everybody to know that it had poached its new baseball coach from a blue blood with a $14.2 billion endowment. I'll give them credit. Yeah, that's trolling right there. I'll give them credit for that. The shocking annual salary and 4-year contracts. That's all they can sign. Mississippi state law makes it so that public employees can only sign 4-year contracts. So actually, he's leaving a guaranteed deal through 2031 for one that goes through 2029, but for a lot more money. Um, that that amount of money puts a different perspective on the hue and cry from O'Connor that started last fall and ran into the spring about how Carla Williams was not willing to give him the resources he needed to be able to compete. Clearly, it wasn't about the resources to be able to compete. He left for double the money, and he had already doubled it. And the contract he signed last year with EVA doubled his salary from what he was making before. Money was the issue for O'Connor, but it wasn't so much resources, it was money in his bank account. I'm not criticizing. People offer you money, a lot of people take it, right? Um, it's hard to turn down to even just listening to people about who want to offer you a ridiculous amount of money. But this is where I think we can have a problem with it. Just say it. They gave you double the money. I mean, he told Jerry it was about needing a new place to go, a challenge and a change. And it's no, it was about the money, dude. Okay, it's okay, and it's okay to say that. We have no problem with that. Just don't couch it in some other way. Now, not surprisingly, O'Connor didn't talk about the money when he did this public reception thing. Now, I will point out, I had a lot of, and I'm sure people are watching this right now who sent me some of these emails. Mississippi State fans sent me emails. Oh, we're going to have a sellout crowd there and the stadium holds 15,000. We're going to have more people there than you guys have for your regular season games. Hey, I saw the pictures and video. Shame on y'all. There was hardly anybody there. Okay. So your 15,000 seat stadium had a nice little intimate gathering of people. Um, but they had an event and they rolled the carpet out just like UVA did a few months ago when we announced Ryan Odom And I counted the number of people there for that, and I counted them twice because the cameras could make it look decent, but you can only do so much with empty seats everywhere. So what did O'Connor do? He didn't talk about the money. He talked about, quote, building young men and impacting their lives. We've heard that here, in Charlottesville and Central Virginia for years from O'Connor, and we believed him, but it kind of rings hollow now. More quotes from O'Connor. I love making difficult decisions. I don't shy away from them. It's not an ego thing. If you're a leader in whatever you do, you can't be afraid to make difficult decisions. It's funny that he considers it a difficult decision to take a job paying him $2.9 million a year. Now, I'm going to talk about some numbers on the other side here to run a program that averaged a tick under 3.5 million in revenues the last 3 years. No business in the world operates anywhere close to this, by the way. Oh yeah, we sold $3.5 million in widgets and we're going to pay the CEO $2.9 million for the revenues. That's not even including all the other costs that go into making those widgets. This makes no sense. The Mississippi State baseball program ran a $3.1 million operating deficit in 2024. Um, and that was with their head coach at the time, Chris Lamanis, who was fired this past April. 3.5 years, we'll say, after winning the 2021 national championship. They beat UVA in the World Series on the way to getting that 2021 championship, the only national championship in Mississippi State athletics history. He was making $1.33 million a year. So the back of the envelope math here suggests that, okay, now you're paying the new coach $1.6 million more than you were paying the old coach. And he was overpaid too. Everybody, I'll just say this, I'll editorialize this. Any college coach is overpaid. Any college football or basketball coach, it seems like baseball coaches are way overpaid relative to the revenue that their sports generate. Okay, let's just say that. So I'm not just picking here on Mississippi State or UVA baseball. From football, everybody makes way. They're all paid way too much money according to what their businesses generate. Okay, um, but you're paying your new coach 1.6. So you already lose a lot of money. Now you're paying your new coach $1.6 million a year more than you paid the other guy. That bumps your program deficit closer to $5 million a year, and that's before you factor in the increase in scholarships that O'Connor's been promised from the 11.7 that they've always been allowed to offer by the NCAA. Now the NCAA allows schools to offer up to 34 baseball scholarships, and Mississippi State says it's going to give the full allotment. And there's also a report that the Mississippi State's going to give $2 million of the money from the House settlement kitty to baseball. That's another 2 million. So $2 million is 10%. So now you're talking about 7.5 maybe million dollars in losses, and even if they do fill the baseball stadium up every game, ticket prices for baseball aren't what they are for football or basketball. There's no TV money for baseball. I mean, I say no, there's very minuscule TV money for baseball. So, you're going to lose. This is a guaranteed money loser. There's no business plan here that says giving Brian O'Connor an absurd amount of money is going to make us any money. It's not going to even help us not lose money. And this is at an athletics department that ran a $7 million deficit last year. Um, Now, this is a Zach Selman problem. Zach Selman is the athletics director down there. He took over in 2023. He took over an athletics program that is the bottom feeder in the SEC in terms of overall spending. I mean, they spend about half of what the big boys in the SEC do. Alabama, Texas A&M, Tennessee, LSU. They spend about half or less than half or right around half of what those big boys do. Um, and but at least his predecessor had run budget surpluses, the last few years that of his tenure. Selman has run deficits the last couple of years, so he's spending more, thinking he's making more, but he's not making more. Um, Now this is all relevant against the backdrop of something that my colleague Scott German was told just yesterday. He talked at length with a higher up in UVA athletics and learned that among the issues that Brian O'Connor had had with Carla Williams, the athletics director at UVA, was that Williams wasn't budging on how she plans to allocate UVA's 20.6 million in house settlement money they're allowed to spend. Um, with the ratio that was shared with us yesterday being 70% football, 20% men's basketball, 10% split primarily for the non-revenue sports, primarily among women's basketball, baseball, men's lacrosse. Those sports lose money, but at least they make the most revenues back against their losses. So the 10% is roughly going to be split three ways between those three programs. So on top of that, we learned that Williams has told the coaches of the non-revenue programs that they're going to have to need to take on a much bigger role in fundraising for their programs. Now, we were told that among that group of coaches, O'Connor, by far the highest paid the group, was the only one to balk at that fundraising part of things. And instead, he decided to play what I'm terming a stealth PR game. The word started leaking out last fall. Hey, O'Connor's, not happy with the amount of money he's going to get for baseball going forward. There was a leak of a Zoom meeting and where he did this. I mean, it got to be very quasi-public that he was unhappy about the money situation. And it was putting public pressure on Williams to cave. And I'll say that, I mean, from what I'm being told, that, there were a lot of efforts and a lot of success in raising more money for baseball. That'll be for the next coach at this point. And as that was all going on, he was talking to Mississippi State about, getting more money for him. Um, so that says a lot about where he comes from this. Um, I'm going to give credit to Carla Williams for holding firm on this. UVA baseball ran a $3.4 million operating deficit last year. So even more of slightly more, but more of a money loser than Mississippi State baseball. Let's be real here. Football, when I looked at the numbers, UVA football ran a $21.5 million operating surplus last year. Men's basketball, a $4.5 million operating surplus last year. They actually make money in those two sports. That's where you've got to prioritize your investments. All things being equal, if they were, yes, UVA baseball has a national championship and seven appearances in the College World Series since 2009. Since 2009, UVA football's had three winning seasons. So if all things were equal, yeah, put more money in baseball and make football go out there and make Tony Elliott go out there and beg for money. But all things aren't equal. Football brought in $54.6 million in revenue last year. Baseball brought in $2.7 million in revenue. Do some quick math on that. That's 20 times the amount baseball brought in. That's where you put your money. So I'll say about all this, I doubt that O'Connor was holding up Williams to double his salary. He wasn't, from everything we've been told, he was not asking for more money for him. He was already making $1.4 million a year. Um, This is an instance of that Zach Selman guy down there at Mississippi State not being good at his job. He didn't need to give Brian O'Connor $2.9 million a year to get him to leave. Brian O'Connor was looking to leave because he backed himself into a corner. He cried all fall and winter and spring about how he wasn't getting money from UVA. He was looking for a job. Um, Someone could have offered him a couple $100,000 more to make it look good. Just, he couldn't offer him what he was making at UVA. He couldn't offer him what he was paying Chris Lamanis, but he could have gotten away with 1.6. Um, and he would have gotten the deal done there. Instead, he gave him 2.9. I love this quote from O'Connor and he did a press gaggle, of course, with the local media down there after the event that wasn't well attended. Quote, Zach Selman was a big part of this. I felt like if I was going to leave this place that I loved and worked for 22 years, it had to be the right partnership first and foremost. You can almost hear Brian O'Connor thinking as he's saying that, sucker. He gave me twice the amount of money uh, for no reason. One other quote from O'Connor along those lines. There's been a lot of schools over the years that reached out about their jobs, but make no mistake about it, this was the right one for Brian O'Connor to take a different path for his career. It was the shiny maroon car with that big bag of money in the trunk.